Hi guys, Brain here, and welcome to another commentary video. Today, I wanted to talk about the idea of shaking up the meta, which is something that I see both on the Survivor and Killer set of Dead by Daylight. Something that people ask for pretty frequently is that the meta gets pretty stale time to time, and it's one of those things that we want to consistently be looking at and trying to change frequently. That way the game prevents itself from getting stale. However, usually what happens in these scenarios is that I see a lot of people that ask for the meta to be shaken up. When the meta actually does get shaken up, a lot of people seem to get upset. A lot of people don't seem to be happy, and it also seems that they want the meta to be shaken up in a way that specifically benefits their side. But I kind of want to dive into today what it means to actually shake up a meta. Like, what does that actually look like? Like, what is a actual meta shakeup, and what that means, and how I feel like a lot of DBD players don't really know what they're asking for when they ask for a meta shakeup because of their reactions to when the meta actually does get shaken up. So let's go ahead and talk about it. So, shaking up the meta. When you're going to shake up the meta in any game, not even just Dead by Daylight, but games in general, when you are going to choose to shake up the meta in a game, you actually have to introduce actual good perks or actual good characters or something to that effect. Essentially, the bottom line is the thing has to be good. Now, obviously, if something becomes overpowered or too strong, especially when in Dead by Daylight's case, when a lot of it comes down to a lack of effort or input in that thing continues to be super strong, that is not good. You don't want to go overboard and release like a super S+ tier thing that just like dominates the meta. You don't want that. But typically, you want to introduce very, very good, very, very nice like A tier perks or A tier characters that are usable and are nice to have. This is something I kind of covered in my Singularity video that I made whenever Singularity came out, talking about like being confused why survivors hate going up against the Singularity, because it seemed like people had been, lamenting the past two killer releases, that being Night and Skull Merchant, and rightfully so. They're pretty boring. And when they finally got Singularity, who, has some things that are very, very aggressively anti-chase about him, even though they're not that amazing and overwhelming, especially compared to somebody like Blight or Spirit, people seem to really hate and pan that character critically. And it just made me wonder, it's like, this character is like low B, high C. He's not that strong of a character. And if you made him any weaker, he probably wouldn't be worth playing. And you already see that, you guys have been playing out there with Survivor. You guys actually haven't been seeing a lot of Singularities. I haven't been running into a lot of Singularities either. And it's because he's kind of a middle of the pack killer, if not a little bit weaker than that. So you already see that even with his, kind of an average power, there are still people that aren't feeling really compelled to play him. A lot of the killer player base doesn't really feel compelled to play him, because if you're really looking at a shakeup and characters that you actually want killers to, go in and play, you want to shake up that meta, the character's got to be worth playing. The character's got to be good enough or strong enough that people feel compelled to play them. If you're going to introduce perks and characters that aren't good, that aren't at least mid to high B or A tier, people typically aren't going to use these things. People aren't going to want to do that. And I see that a lot in terms of conversations, is that people want to, shake up the meta, and they'll buff small perks in very, very small ways. They're like, let's look at a lot of the older perks that don't have any use right now and try to buff them to be strong. But then they only buff them up to C+ tier or B- tier in terms of strength. And it's that's not going to shake up the meta. When we're talking about shaking up the meta, we mean something that's strong A tier, high B tier, something that when you bring it, you're going to get value. A character like a killer that you bring in, and you don't always have to be running the tippiest, toppest, strongest build to get results. Something that is good enough to stand on its own 2 feet and go burr without any sort of massive influence or over adjustment on your end. That's just how it goes. Because if you don't do that, people aren't going to be interested in doing it. But the problem is, and this is where the emotional side of the DVD community comes in, is that often being good, not even being OP, but often being good leads to an extreme irritation on the other side. An extreme irritation on the other side. Even if something is not S tier, even if something is not top 5 perks in the game, that leads to irritation on the other side, because in the game of Dead by Daylight, as you've noticed by being in this community for a while, is that players seem to treat perks and characters very hostilely, trying to kind of treat these things as well, I lost because of the perk, I lost because of the character, and it wasn't necessarily anything I could have done better. And there are some situations, I will say, that are marginal, that, yeah, sometimes you just get a map that spawns with a bunch of L-wall, T-walls against a very, very good killer like Wesker, and yeah, as a survivor in that situation, you did kind of get screwed. Not a whole lot you can do there. And on the flip side, as killer, you could be sent to like Mother's Dwelling with like a 110 killer and like not a lot of slowdown in your build. And yeah, you are going to kind of get screwed there. You're kind of going to have a bad time. But like for a lot of the part, there's a lot of stuff that the DBD community does not introspect on. It does not look inside and see, what could I have done better there? Could I have looped this tighter? Could I have left the tile easier or earlier for a easier, like a safer loop? Could I have brought a stronger build? Could I have like, you know, proxy camped a little? Could I have tunneled somebody earlier and made a nicer situation for myself? DBD players don't seem to ask these questions for themselves, and they usually, in place of asking those questions on how they could solely improve, solely improve, that's the word, not solely, solely improve, is they go to the game, they go to perks, they go to characters, they go to the meta, right? They like that person was running meta, and that's why I lost. And these things, you kind of can't have these opinions at the same time. You can't want the meta to be shaken up, and when something comes along that actually, you know, goes in and you find it's on most survivor builds, you can't be like, oh, well, that's just the only reason I'm losing, and that's, you know, that it's playing the game for them and there's nothing I can do. It was funny because before Made for this came out, that was slowly becoming windows of opportunity, which I still find to be the funniest, most ridiculous thing, that in a vacuum of like a very clear like meta boogeyman, that the killer community was starting to look at windows of opportunity as the perk that was autopiloting and causing survivors to win, when it literally is just a highlight the resources perk, which is kind of like no different from Zanshin Tactics for killer. Like, it's just like it feels like some people always need a boogeyman, but I feel like a lot of these people that are always wanting a boogeyman also ask for meta shakeups. But like, this is what you need. That you did get the meta shakeup. The fact that you were seeing windows more often was a response of people who didn't have as many like OP perks to run on the survivor end, like old Debhard and stuff, trying to find something that was chase oriented, that was still neat to use. So they went to windows, which had its cooldown removed, so it was more consistently helpful. So they replaced the old chase perk that kind of did actually play the game for them with windows of opportunity, and that's why you started seeing it all the time, because the meta did shift. They said, Deadhard isn't doing it for me anymore because obviously it's not as OP as it used to be, so we're gonna find another chase perk to put in the slot. And then they did, and even though that chase perk was not necessarily overpowered in any way, just really good, people were kind of clamoring for it to get nerfed. And it's like, no, like, you need to have perks that are good and worth using if you want a meta shakeup. If you make all the perks useless, people aren't going to use them, and the meta is going to fall back to the same way, you know? So yeah, I know this one was a little bit more ranty, but I just kind of wanted to talk about, if I could just like kind of summarize what I'm feeling, what I'm talking about, is if you want the meta to be shaken up, and you're one of those people that always wants like the meta to change frequently, you got to also be comfortable with strong A tier characters and perks coming into the game, and not necessarily like at the drop of a hat, like clamoring for these things to be nerfed or changed, because that's what you wanted. That's what you asked for. A meta shakeup is introducing strong A tier things into the game that are worth using, so people actually start using them instead of the stuff that people have been commonly using over the past history of the game. Just trying to understand that these feelings are at odds. You kind of can't have them at the same time. You can pick one or the other, but like, understand that these feelings are conflicting, and if you try to hold both, that's kind of why you're kind of in a place of constant frustration, is because they really don't go together. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about this down in the comments below. But other than that, that's gonna be it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I do upload daily though, so I will see you tomorrow, but if I do not, I will see you when I see you. Goodbye.